Okay, good day everyone. So we are now going to discuss the introduction to tour guiding. So this lesson is lesson 2 in our syllabus. So in this lesson, we're going to discuss the following topics. So it's a very concise lesson. So we got four key points here. So we're going to first define what is a tour guide, the various classification of a tour guide, its roles and responsibility as a tour guide, and of course some helpful terminologies that we're going to use on our first day when we meet our guests in their airport service. So these are some of the important topics that we're going to discuss for today. So now let's proceed now with the definition. So of course, before we start everything, we should be able to define things clearly. So our first key point here is to define what is a tour guide. So based on the existing laws, particularly the tourism code, which defines a tour guide is an individual. So the term tour guide refers to a profession of an individual who is either as an employee of affiliated of a duly licensed travel and tour agency, guides tourists, both foreign and domestic, for a fee, commission, or any other forms of lawful remuneration. So let's discuss the words or the important keywords to indicate its full meaning. First is, of course, I have to focus with the word individual. So tour guide refers to an individual, a profession. So tour guide is not just a title, but it's actually referring to the profession itself. So for example, you might be a teacher, but that teacher is a profession, not just simply a title. So a tour guide is neither as an employee or affiliate. So employee. So there is a choice whether you are on your own or subcontracting with a tour or a licensed tour operator, or you are directly hired as an employee of the said travel and tour agency. So next is, of course, the word duly licensed travel and tour agency. Of course, our validity as a tour guide also depends or also matter of retrospective with the agencies that we're going to involve with. So besides your license, individual license as a tour guide from the Department of or accreditation from the Department of Tourism, and your local license from your LGU or local government unit. So also going to be, of course, you have to make sure that if you're working with a travel agency or tour operator, that a travel agency or tour operator is also a legit. So because somewhat along the way, it might harm our reputation as a legitimate tour guide if we're dealing with businesses that are not registered or, of course, not compliant with the minimum bare requirements of the law. So that's it. Next is which guides both foreign and domestic. So basically, the realm of the possibility whether you are from abroad, you're conducting guiding there, or here in the Philippines, are both incorporated in the definition. So there is no limit to the geographical scope of the operation. Next is for a fee, commission, or any other form of lawful remuneration. So basically, of course, since this is a business and every profession needs to have a some sort of income for their day-to-day living. Of course, as a tour guide, our form of income could be in the form of a service fee, or it could be a form of commission per the passenger, or commission on the purchases of our passenger, or commission in terms of how many passenger are availing our tour, or in any other lawful means of getting paid. So these are some of the silent definition of the law. So in Beerman's terminology, what is a tour guide? So basically, a tour guide is the one who facilitates the tour. So basically, that's my own definition of a tour guide. Now, of course, not everyone is capable of doing that. You have the skills necessary to do that. Plus, of course, there should be a some sort of license. In the Philippines, tour guiding is not so as rigorous as the other countries, like in Japan, Korea, and UK. They have specific license, some sort of equivalent of a board program, because that is scrutinized by a panel of judges or a panel of experts. So in the Philippines, it's not so rigorous, but of course, and of course, they have to maintain a certain level of acceptable quality. And all this falls in the hand of the local government unit, because a tour guide could only have a license from the local government unit, while of course he might skip the accreditation process of the DOT. But of course, having both accreditation and the license from the local government is a plus factor for every tour guide. So that is to your advantage. And of course, it's the expenses. Of course, siguro they are just the time, because when you are dealing with accreditation, you need to have a proper training, so that will require time on the part of the tour guide. So I think the major barrier for that is the availability of their time, because if they're earning, they might be, thinking twice whether they would avail the accreditation process, because of the opportunity loss that they may perceive if they go with the training requirement, which is approximately an average around 30 days for the DOT accreditation process. For the license of the LGU, it's quite easy, so they can easily obtain that. Okay, so now let's proceed now with the next topic. Okay, the types of tour guide. For the types of tour guide, it's all okay. I just highlighted the most important aspects of the types, because you can classify tour guides in many ways that are endlessly possible. So basically, I just categorize that into three. Okay. First is according to employment. There are two types of guides according to their employment or involvement with the company. We have the staff guides. So staff guides is also what we call the in-house guides, because they are directly an employee of the company. So meaning to say, whether or not there is a tour, the staff guides receive a payment or salary as a major form of their employment benefits or employment income. So that is much more secure grounds for the staff guide, because they are directly employed by the travel and tour company. And of course, as an employee, your employer has a responsibility and duties to make sure that you are properly paid. Now, this is in contrast with the freelance. So freelance is, or freelance guides, or what sometimes we call it as on-call guides, because literally we call them if there is a tour. So if the staff guides or our in-house guide could no longer accommodate this tour or groups that are incoming, so basically we hire extra hand. So this extra hand is what we call the freelance guides, or what we call on-call guides. So these on-call guides are basically earning their income from the service fee that we pay directly to them, plus the tips coming from the guests. So basically, in terms of income potential, of course, we will have a greatest idea that the freelance guide has many potential income stream, because they're not just working for us, but they are also working with other tour operators or companies. Of course, they could select the most much more preferential rate if they are very competitive in the market. So let's say we charge at around 1,000 per, or let's say 1,000 per half day. So if they are their qualification is impeccable, if their qualification, of course their image is quite known to the market, they could charge probably much more higher, or they could look for other tour operators that would capitalize to their fame, and of course that will entail much more better income for them. So that's it. That's the beauty of freelance guide, because you can work with any employer, or basically the employer is not just selecting the tour guide. The tour guide also selects the employer, so which company is the best for them. So it's the power of being freelance. The downside here is, of course, a freelance has no definite salary. So in terms of security, they're much more less secure compared with the staff guides. And of course, since uh, this setup creates, of course, as you will know, much of the best tour guides that we know in the market are commonly freelance guide because they're competent or they are confident and confident to their skills. So they are, taking things on their own. Now, if you're starting up, it's recommended, much more recommended to start as a staff guide. So because at the end of the day, you will realize that, of course, you are at least secure with your salary. So if you're starting, if you're training, you're still in the process of developing the competency and the skills necessary for this profession, much more better to start with staff guide. And then eventually, if you develop the confidence and the competency, of course, as time goes by, you will be, you will be enticed to have your own business because being a freelance is some sort of a business, some sort of a business like thinking because you're selling your services to different companies. So that's how freelance guides work. Now, next is the local guides. Local guides are referring to those individual or resident or citizen of certain place that guides their tourists. For example, I am a local guide at Intramuros. My friend is a local guide in Beijing. So because my friend in Beijing is a citizen or is a resident of Beijing for 10 years, he's much more qualified or knowledgeable to guide people around in Beijing because he had been there for almost 10 years. So that's the advantage of local guides. So when you say local guides, they are local or they are specific people from that place. So they know the ins and outs of that place. So that will be very helpful for the tourists, especially if they are um, taking other remote destinations or there are limited number of guides such as those domestic destinations that we know in the province that of course they're not yet commercially viable for tour operators, so local guides are really helpful. So the problem lang for the only problem is that some local guides are not uh, does not possess the qualifications for proper tour guiding. So that's the only downside. But local guides in major urban centers like Manila, Philippines, Kuala Lumpur, Beijing, in Tokyo, so it has already possess competency and qualifications necessary for them to become a professional tour guide. So for that, there's no much problem about that. Next is about specialized tour guide. Specialized tour guides are referring to those tour guides that has a special sets of qualities or skill sets. So when you say specialized tour guides, of course, these are much more expensive compared with your normal tour guide because the price or the price tag is coming or emanating from the speciality of their services. Example, specialist tour guide would be the language tour guide, for example, Mandarin tour guide, because we're paying him based on his premium of the skill sets that he can speak Mandarin. So just imagine if a staff guy or our average payment for a freelance guide, English only, is ranging from 1,000 to 3,000 pesos per half day. So if you are a specialist tour guide, of course, you are getting much more pay for that because we're putting a premium to your qualification. So from 1,000 to 3,000, now it jack up to around at the minimum of 4,000 to 7,000 per half day city tour. So that is half day. So it's not full day. So if it's a full day, much more competitive because of your ability to speak Mandarin or the language premiums. So much worth for the Japanese, the Russian, the Spanish guys. So this they have a premium for that. Now another way of specialization would be the technical knowledge. For example, diver guides. Diver guides are, of course, they need to be a PADI certified. So PADI is a body that certifies scuba divers. So not all tour guides could be qualified or meet the physical requirement of being a scuba diver. So of course, that will entail much more premium on their services because of the specialty. Next would be a specialized tour guide for the specific company or specific museum. There are some corporate bodies, organizations that are too large, so they hire their own curator or their own tour guides in house. For example, companies such as Samsung's, companies such as major global company, they have their own tour guides for their facilities, and also private museums, and of course, national museum abroad. So they have their own tour guide, which are commonly called as, or rather, the curator acting as a part-time tour guide for the museum. So that's how specialized tour guide is. So basically, if you're asking me which among them is the highest paid, of course, the specialized tour guides because of the premium of their technical or their certain skill sets that they are possessing that is not or not easily to be obtained in the common market. So that's how they earn much because of language, specific skill sets. uh, Another example would be hiking guides. So of course, there should be an experience plus certification when you're guiding people going up to the mountain because that is I mean, a risk, a risk in terms of the life and safety of our guests. So there is much more premium for that. Okay, next, let's go. So what are the roles and responsibility of a tour guide? So it's very important for us to really know the roles and responsibility, not just I'm a tour guide. So basically, if you said you're a tour guide and you're not prepared to take this role, so of course, you're making quite a misplaced assumption, or you're not taking your job seriously, because being a tour guide has different responsibility. And of course, that is some of the responsibility is really heavy, or some of the responsibility could be commonly practiced by us, or commonly could be, of course, the bottom line here is that being a tour guide is being a people oriented business. So if you're not a people oriented business, of course, sad to say, being a tour guide is, of course, there's hope for you to reorient yourself. You're still young, but of course, there's possibility for you may look for other professions. So if you're not people oriented, in general, I think tourism and hospitality are, I mean, a people oriented business. So you have to really develop or ingrain yourself with this kind of people skills, because at the end of the day, it's all boiled down to how you present yourself, personality plus communication skills. So now, to go with the to the key topic. So the first responsibility or role of a tour guide is to become an overseer. So overseer means to say that you are looking for the welfare of all the people in your group. So you're not just looking for your own welfare, but you are looking for the welfare of the whole group. So meaning to say you are some sort of a supervisor. So supervisor of what? Supervisor of people, because you might, example, tourists might be doing some things that are against the museum or against the policy of the tourist destination, such as taking picture, flash photography. Of course, as a tour guide, it is your responsibility to inform them ahead of time before they go with the museum, because as you know, photography or flash photography could destroy the artifacts. So it's very important for us. Of course, if we didn't do our job properly, the museum might ban us or might ban your group. So of course that will cause a lot of chaos on your part as a tour guide, and also a lot of headache for your tour operator, because the passenger might demand refund on that particular activity. Of course, it creates lots of dissatisfaction for the guests. So a simple mistake steps would lead to a certain unwanted circumstances or unwanted effects. Okay. Next, coordinator. You are a coordinator as a tour guide. You are coordinator, what we call the go-between, between the organizer, between the various stakeholders of your group. Because your main goal here is to coordinate. Let's say you are doing the sit in coach group. The group is not homogeneous, I should mention, because sometimes you will get a group that are combined with different family, different friends, or you will have some solo travelers that are combined into a group. So basically, you are the coordinator. You would want to establish a series of common goal, and of course, you are a tour guide there. You are representing this established common goal for the group, which is of course to have a meaningful tour. Of course, your tool here would be your tour itinerary. You have to follow whatever is in your tour itinerary. So as per the itinerary. So any deviation for that might be cause any untoward cause of dissatisfaction or confusion on the part of the guest. So as a tour coordinator or coordinator itself, you're also tasked to assist passenger during their business with their travel suppliers. For example, if the passenger is getting check-in, so you might assist the passenger in checking in the hotel. So in case that's a group, so that's the time to show your skills. Because if it's a group check-in, it's quite hard for the hotel to assist everyone or every passenger in the lobby, because that's quite harmful. So you might pre-check, or you might have the initiative to get their passport on the board and have them pre-check in, or have a form that are listed their names, passport number, and of course the guests will much sure willing, or they are confident enough to allow you to have their passport, and then of course explain the details, and of course proper coordination. You can make coordinate for the hotel to provide them welcome drinks. So while waiting for the group check-in, so these are some things that you can do to make um, the situation less troublesome for our guests. So these are some techniques that we're doing. Now, another coordinator rules is, of course, in my experience, is from the flight delays, flight cancellation. So these are some of, you are a tour guide there because you are some sort of quality assurance, or some sort of assurance that they will be taken care of, especially in a grave situation of flight cancellation. So basically, the tours will wander. So if that's for more than 24 hours, so they would wonder how they would survive for that day, because sometimes the tourists might also already spend their most of their money, because they're anticipating that they will going to return to the place of origin. So in that sense, as a tour guide, we have to help them, or especially if the cost of the cancellation is not on the part of the tour guide, we have to insist, we have to make sure that the airline is acknowledging their, shortcomings, and of course, a proper rectification are taken care of. Uh, our passenger is being take care of. Our passenger is not being maltreated or abused by the airline in some sort of any form of um, some sort of confusion, or uh, flexing of their rules. So that's our comments. So basically, you are the attorney that stands on or represents their client interests, and also you are also the, at the end of the bargain. Also, you are also the spokesperson of the travel suppliers or you guess, because of course it's easier to convey information professionally and of course in detail if the information is being conveyed to a person of competent. Okay, if it's easier to do business with one person rather than to do business with the individual person in the group. So it's in that sense you are helping them to have a better deal because you have the knowledge, the expertise, and of course you are a local in the place. So yeah, basically you know the customs or traditions there. So okay, so that puts you into a advantageous point. Next is of course timekeeper, because time is essential for every tour. So we cannot allow our guests to freely have their own time. Nevertheless, they should be booked in a private tour. So if it's a group tour or sit-in based tour, so tour guide gives clear example, or I mean rather than example, sorry. sets a clear set of time and specific meeting place where should the tours go. So basically, if the tourist failed to come up with a time, let's say she's late around 10 minutes or 15 minutes, the tour guide should be able to notify her, text her, contact her, and of course inform the tour operator, so that the tour operator will inform the travel agency. So the travel agency will of course check into the passengers' whereabouts. Sometimes it happens a lot, particularly in Hong Kong, that the passenger is forgetting to inform the tour guide that they're going to have their own way. They're not going to return back to the hotel, and of course the tour guide is left um, uh, wondering about where their whereabouts. So it's a common practice that if you are not you didn't show up around 20 minutes or 15 minutes um, past the waiting time or the meeting time, of course the bus will left, and of course it's at on your own period because you didn't show up in time. So that's how strict the tour guide are in other in abroad or outbound tour. In the Philippines, it's hard to do that because we don't have much more developed transportation system. So taxi, though we have taxi or Grab, I think that was quite disadvantageous for the part of the client because there are some things that are, I mean, that the local, or I'm not saying this, uh, they might experience some sort of overpricing when they're dealing with taxi. So that's one disadvantage. So anyway, in boundary operation, the tourists are very responsible, and they are I think somewhat scared about being left by the bus. So they are really showing up promptly within the set time. Okay. Next, shepherd. So as a shepherd, you are the one who leads people. So basically, you should know the exact location. You are familiar with the washroom, with the toilet, where you are well familiar with the shopping malls. You know where to buy these things. You're well familiar with, in case of health emergency, you know where to go with, what hospital, and those things. So basically, people will follow you around. You're going to direct them where to go based on their interests. And of course, that's that's how things are, or people pay you for that. So basically, you are here to direct us where should we want to go, and of course we want to see beautiful places, and as a tour guide, it's our responsibility as a shepherd to present this tourist destination in a more digestible way or a more enjoyable way. Next, watchdog. So watchdog here is basically you are acting as a protector. So basically there are some certain elements within the tour, especially if you're um, having a tour outside the confine of establishment. Let's say you are outside the museum, or you're walking in the streets of Intramuros, you're walking in the streets of Vigan, or somewhere along the beach of Batangas. So of course there are some certain perils, both natural and man-made, that might be endanger the life of and property of our guests. So you know those things for common because it's a urbanized area, and of course there are some pretty much a people, of course not all people, there are some people who are um, miseducated, misguided, that might take advantage of the properties of your guests because they deem it very valuable. And of course, you know, life is hard in Manila, so they might take advantage of that. So now it's your responsibility as a tour guide to warn them, so not to bring any valuables or the money properly secured. And of course, your itinerary should include a precautionary measure designed to, of course, to ensure safety. So in our part, sometimes when we're doing the Binondo tour, so we ask the local policeman to escort the group. So they are in Calesa. kalesas are horse-driven vehicle, and at the end of the kalesa, you will have the mobile patrol. So this will help deter the possible assailant or possible robber, because I'm not telling you that Binondo is a dangerous place, but of course that's a crowded place. Many pickpocketers and of course some sort of um, bad elements might exploit this opportunity. So as a deterrence, we are asking for police escort for the group. So that's how we do watchdog. So we're taking care of the top properties of our guests and also their lives more particularly. So when we are in natural places such as in Boracay, so we ask them not to go to this certain place because there is a some sort of danger lurking in that place, and of course those precautionary measure such as in jellyfish area prone area, starfish prone area, and those stinks for other species, in particular true for scuba guides or diving guides. Next is giver of care. So we are acting as their nurse or their nanny while they are in tour, because of course the tourist is in a some sort of a unfamiliar environment for them. There is a possible stress and discomfort or disorientation. So to ease that disorientation or stress, as a tour guide, we are their parental mothers and fathers figure in this country, because we are acting to ensure that the guest has a comfortable stay here in the Philippines, and also to somewhat um appease their discomfort. Particularly, let's say if the guest, for me, the common complaint of my guests is about um, some Filipino foods are they cannot really. I mean, for us that's palatable, but for them that is some sort of kind of too sweet, too salty, too oily. So of course, uh, because of that, we revised the itinerary. We we rarely that's also one problem for the tourism sector here, because of our local cuisine is too salty, too sweet, too oily. So majority of the tour operators, I actually not majority. I think that is almost avoid to have a some sort of Filipino dish because of the you know uh, palatability issue for the tourists. We try to incorporate still the Filipino cuisine because that is part of the experience of our guests. But it should be in the form of a buffet, so a buffet type of service, so that in case that the passenger would not really want to go for that food, they have other options to choose from. So the only advantage will be the price or the costing. But of course, costing for local tours in terms of foreign tourists is in terms of dollar, in terms of the cost of living, still much more manageable. So I think you're giving much more value compared if we're sticking out with one particular dish. That's it. Presenter, interpreter. So for presenter, we are here to present. Basically, we show good places, beautiful scenery for our tourists. It basically highlights its importance to us as Filipinos, and we basically boast or being proud of their these unique features, both natural and man-made. For interpretation, it means to say that we go deeper. So basically, we interpret the different meanings of this destination, these spots, these features, these artifacts beyond beyond the superficial labels or context that we are commonly associated with that. So for example, we interpret the statue or the Manila Cathedral or this edifice as a symbolic or as a symbol of not only the history of the Philippines but also the symbols of being a Filipino until now, because this our edifice reflects our history and heritage. So this is how interpretation are being done. So in our latter lesson or more advanced lesson, we're going to have a distinction between the presentation and interpretation. So how does they differ? So basically, presentation or presenter is much more superficial. It's within the physical context or realm. Interpretation is somewhat more cultural. It goes beyond the superficial perspective of the things or objects or phenomenon or spots that we're enjoyed or we're currently enjoying as a tourist. Next. So these are some helpful terminology. These are 10 terminology, and of course, this is not all the terminology that we use in the business, but these are the common terminology that we use during the tourist arrival or in connection with the airport or airport transaction or business in the airport. So these are some terminologies that we're using. So that's standard. I think it's not only in tour guiding, but also in travel and tour operation, in FA, in airport operation, in hotel business. So these are very important terminology shared in the whole spectrum of tourism and hospitality industry. So first is estimated time of departure or ETD. So that's your departure. So in your ticket, or the ticket is being represented with two times. So estimated time of departure and estimated time of arrival, both stated in local time. For example, Manila to Narita. So you have the time and estimated time of departure. In Manila, let's say, for example, that's 8 o'clock. And of course, it's at 8 o'clock in Manila. So estimated time of arrival in Narita is around 11. So that's the local time in Narita. That's 11 o'clock in Japan, Narita, or Tokyo. So now, bakit hindi na lang po sabihin natin time of departure and time of arrival? As much as we would like to have a specific time, because of the variability of the air travel, because of certain climate, certain weather disturbance, certain wind direction, certain traffic consideration of your flight. So we have the estimated time because of that. So we're not so sure about whether or not we're going to arrive at 8, but we're hoping that we're getting there within the range of 8 and beyond. So that's how estimated time arrival and estimated time of departure. So commonly we call it as ETD and ETA, so for tour guides. Next, check-in and check-out. So this is referring to your hotel and of course, hotel. For airlines, check-in lang, wala na pong check-out because as you go out or as you disembark with the plane, it's already check-out. So check-in and check-out is really important, particularly in hotel business. Okay. Check-in is where you give or it's a process of reconfirming and registrating or validating the identity of the guests. So you have your prior reservation with the hotel. So now the hotel staff will validate whether you are that person because of your passport. So it's very important first to have your passport or any other forms of identification with you so that the hotel could validate whether or not you are that person, that you are uh, having this kind of particular advanced reservation. So it's very important for them to validate that for the purpose of ensuring the safety of the guests and of course not to avoid misdeclaration or other person that claiming the reservation. So these are some of the important policies set by the hotel. And besides that, is also to have some sort of a guarantee for the hotel, or let's say there are some local laws required that the hotel should be able to report people in case they're lost for more than 42 hours. So in some places, or for example in Hong Kong, if you're not found in your I mean, if you're missing for 42 hours, the hotel or the authorities from the place might call the hotel and of course check you out there. So these are some, of course, you should be able to have your passport and various information such as your contact number, your email, etc., so that the authorities could contact you. So that's according to the law. So um, Check-in normally starts in 2 p.m. So 2 p.m. So it could be as early as 12, it could be as late as 3 p.m. So depending on the hotel policy. So in average, it's around 2 p.m. So you can only get into your hotel or you can only get into your room uh, at 2 p.m. So in case that there is an available room, so there is already clean rooms. So the hotel might be under that may be too gracious on their part to allow you for an early check-in. So early check-in, for example, there is an available room, so you might be able to enjoy your um, rest upon your arrival. So, for example, you arrive at around 10 a.m. and your checkout is 2. If there's no available room, you have to wait for the 2 p.m. So you just have to stay in the lobby, or you can go outside and leave your luggage with the concierge or the clock room and then take your trip, or you can explore the local downtown area, eat your lunch, or enjoy sightseeing tour. Now, if there is an available room already in the hotel, so you arrive at around 10 o'clock and there is an available room. So, of course, the hotel could offer that room and you will be allowed to have the early check-in at no additional cost, of course. Now, if you are in group, that is quite hard to do because if one particular person is being, as the hotel give a particular person early check-in request. Of course, the other person in the group might also request for that kind of request. And as we all know, the hotel is not so. I mean, the hotel occupancy is really much more complicated business. So we cannot give early check-in for the whole group. Nevertheless, if it's pre-secured, I mean to say that the tour operator have already paid for the early check-in to ensure that the guests will have an early check-in. Now, next is late checkout. Late checkout is a request for you to check out. So, checkout time in a hotel is 12 noon. So, if you exceed beyond 12 noon, you have to pay for the late checkout fee or late checkout payment or penalty. So you have to be able to arrive in a front desk with your things, and of course, you have to surrender the key card or the key to the front office, and of course, settle your bills whenever it is, your mini bar, etc. And of course, secure or have your guarantee or get the guarantee or the initial deposit with you. So for late checkout, that's 12 noon. So sometimes our flight are quite little bit late. For example, your flight is around 11 midnight. You might request the hotel to have 6 p.m. Late checkout. So for 6 p.m. Now, in rare occasion, if the hotel is has no passenger coming in, they may grant your request for late checkout. So in rare occasion, but in based on my experience, it really happens to me that I have a late checkout without extra payment. So normally the hotel would allow you to have a late checkout, but you have to pay for a late checkout penalty or late checkout fee. Or worse, the hotel will require you to pay the additional night. So it depends upon your perusal as a passenger. Next is a visa extension. So we have tourist guests that are allowed to stay in the Philippines for 30 days. So normally that's ASEAN visa. For the Chinese one, I think 30 days then. Um, so in case that the passenger has many places to visit or they would wish to have a much more longer stay, so the tour guide could also offer this service through the tour operator for a visa extension. So basically, they're going to have your passport with you and then they're going to send it to the Bureau of Immigration for revalidation of your visa or entry, and then of course stamping it with the necessary document. Of course, that is for a fee. Now, Go show is a particular incident in the passenger that the passenger has no prior reservation, no booking, but showed up in the hotel, or I mean, showed up with the airlines, particularly in airlines. Of course, this is Go show. So they are, let's say, I'm having my ticket or my flight for tomorrow, but I instilled or I show up in the airline counter today, asking them if they could allow me to take the flight for today because I'm quite in a hurry. So that is a go show. So for go show, of course, there would be a penalties and of course necessary policies of the airlines. So may bayad po siya pag nag-go show ka. It's not just you can suddenly change your schedule. Yan. Chance passenger is basically some sort of related with go show. So chance passenger is your passenger has no confirmed prior reservation or there's no confirmed ticket. He's basically taking his chance whether or not there is a left vacant seats in the airline that the airline could eventually award to them or the airline could sell to them on the spot. So that is chance passenger. Waitlisted passenger, waitlist, it refers to the hotel and also the airlines. Basically, you are put in a waitlist. I mean to say if there is a passenger who will back up or a passenger will not show up, your waitlist will be confirmed. So the chances are, of course, depending on the dates. So when you say for the hotel, so if it's a weekends, chances are very slim. If it's weekdays, especially Spanish days such as Tuesday, Wednesday, so your chance of being confirmed is pretty much higher compared with the weekends. Okay. Tour itinerary refers now to your detailed plan. It's a detailed plan because there is a time, what to do, where to do, and of course, expectations set by the tour operator for the tourists. So actually, that is our, as a tour guide, is our Bible. So we have to follow the tour itinerary. So we have to follow the itinerary for the day. We have to follow the itinerary for the whole duration of their trip if you're going to become the tour guide for the whole group, for the whole duration. So it rarely happens that you're going to be the tour guide for day 1 until the day 4 because, availability of time. The common practice is you're going to become a tour guide for them for day 2, day 3, or day 1, day 4 only. So these are some of common practice that we do in the industry. Next is the tour voucher. Tour voucher is basically the evidence or this the hard copy. It's a document that shows what particular service are included in the, or what particular service are already paid. So the details, the arrangement and things such as the hotel name, number of rooms, meal if there's a meal, type of tours if there is a tour. So um, pickup time, etc., and those things. So tour voucher is basically a document showing you that this services is already been paid, so that passenger could avail the voucher in exchange for for their payment. So that's how voucher work. Okay. Now let before I end this lesson, I would like to ask you a question regarding with if you're a guide. So if you're just put yourself in the perspective of a tour guide. So if you're a guide, would you prefer to be a staff guide or a freelance guide? So of course, each one of us has a different perspective. Of course, needs and wants as well. So kayo, what do you want to become staff guide or a freelance guide? So now for the answer, please comment it down to the link below, or you might have some questions or comments and suggestions. Please do so. And of course, if you're not subscribed yet, so please kindly subscribe. And of course, if you find it very informational or very useful for your profession, or you know someone who will benefit in this video, you might share it with them. So thank you very much and have a nice day. Thank you. Bye-bye.